Hey guys, what's up? It's Chris here. You kind of figured out from the title what's going on here, and of course this thing sitting next to me. This is the engine from Mission Control. I got about 280,000 miles out of this engine. It's been a great car. So I figured I'd give you guys a little backstory and story time on what happened and why I'm sitting here in the garage next to a 6.1 Hemi engine. So I purchased the car back in 2009. It was a family car. We actually called it the family car for my wife at the time and my young son, Nikolai. And we just used the car locally, no big deal. It was a great car, to tool around, around town in. It wasn't until around 2016 that I decided to use the car full time for filming because I got tired of renting rental cars and trying to figure out how to mount video equipment and things like that. It just wasted a lot of time when I was out on site, and I just wanted to be able to feel confident, in whatever vehicle I was driving. And the Magnum was just the perfect fit because of the suspension was great. It was a nice stiff ride, lots of power, to keep up and do what I need to do. If you guys have ever filmed with me, you know how I like to film. It's a lot of fun, but so the car is a perfect fit. Lots of storage for equipment and things like that for road trips and going out to the shows and things like that. It's been a great car, no issues whatsoever. Probably changed the battery a couple times. I had to change a lifter at a show. Well, I didn't do it, but I had it done at Matt's one year. I had to change an alternator while I was at a show. That was about it in terms of breakdowns, a flat tire, only one flat tire. I maintained the car myself, did everything myself, so I knew exactly what was going on with it at any point in time. Never had any failures whatsoever until this happened. Around 2019, I decided to refresh the car. So I got a new paint job on it, which turned out great. New wheels, new tires, powder coated calipers, new exhaust. So the car was just like brought back up because I really wanted it to look good. I'm going to these shows and I'm sitting next to you guys that have really good looking equipment, so I wanted Mission Control to look as good as possible. So I got all that done, and I decided to trailer the car up from Florida up to the Mid-America Truck Show, and that was 2019. And that was a hard trip because on the way I got a phone call that my father died. I had a choice to make. I decided to finish the show and then come back, because it was just tough. So I realized from that point that I needed to kind of slow down and reassess how I was spending time with family and what I was doing with my life personally. And so that's why some of the videos kind of slowed down a little bit. Eventually, I kind of got a good grasp on what I needed to do and how to kind of, manage my time and not give too much to filmmaking and make sure I give time to family and things like that. 2020 comes around. We all remember what 2020 was. That was a complete mess for a lot of people because of COVID, because of shutdowns and things like that. Right before that happened, I decided that this engine needed a refresh. So I had it rebuilt. It was rebuilt wrong. The company that did it didn't do a good job. They had the engine out 3 different times. They just never got it right. Even when I got it back, it still didn't have the power that I was supposed to have, and I had issues with it. So I kind of tiptoed around with it, still went to some shows and did what I normally did, but it just wasn't right. So toward the end of 2022, I kind of taken the year off. I did some filming here and there, but I again, trying to manage my time and spend time with family and things like that. Because of slowing down, I actually found a great girlfriend, and I'm really thankful that we met, and it's been awesome since. I decided to get everything ready for the 2023 season. Again, I went through the car again, found any little bugs that needed to be fixed, I fixed. All the work that I do on my car, I do it myself. So I put the new ECM in. The last thing that I needed to do was take it on a test drive. So I'm going down the road, right down the street from my house, and I decided to accelerate like you would if you're gonna pass somebody on the road, right? No big deal. Accelerated great, felt good, sounded great, and then all of a sudden, sounded like glass hitting the floor. So I thought it was one of the couplers on the drive shaft, because Chrysler, Dodge, they use these couplers that are like rubber basically, for lack of better words. But when the smoke started coming up from the rear, I realized that we had an issue. coasted into the parking lot and sat there and realized that there's a hole in the block. So I got the car towed back, and I took some time to kind of mourn the car because this car has been a great car. Had no issues whatsoever, over 280,000 miles. I didn't want to get a long block because those were expensive and they're a couple of months out to get one. So I just decided to get what's called a takeout from a reputable company where they offer a used engine, transmission, and the accessories. So I went that route. I actually found a company and I was able to listen to the engine before having it shipped.
Good sound and 6.1 swap under the hood. This one's going to be a motor, transmission, belt-driven accessories, ECU and harness. Sounds great.
The engine showed up on freight. The girlfriend helped get it into the garage because I was out at the time. I took some time to get everything ready. My son Nikolai was in town for the 75 Chrome Shop truck show. We got the engine out and just about back in, and then I finished the rest of the work myself. So here's a video of that going in.
So I got the engine separated from the transmission. The next step is to get the engine up on this engine stand so I can replace the gaskets that need to be replaced.
Alright, so far we unplugged the fuel injectors and unplugged the ignition coils.
We're going to take off the intake manifold and the air intake. The electric fans in there we're going to take out, and a couple of the accessories we're going to leave. Alright, so the exhaust is out, and we're going to just sit this aside. Alright, the drive shaft is out. Originally, I was going to just replace the engine and leave the transmission in because I had imagined that there was no issue with the transmission until I crawled underneath today and found out that the bell housing for the transmission is cracked, and that's what the starter bolts to. So this is the back side of the starter, right here where my fingers are. So initially, this is what I saw the damage was. A window in the side of the block and a cracked pan. So I was just taking off the positive lead for the starter, and something fell down that made an unsettling sound. So some of you will recognize what this is. It's a friggin' connecting rod, and it's broken on both sides. We had ourselves a rapid, unscheduled disassembly here. Not very nice. So I figured I'd do the oil pan gasket while the engine was out. So that's what that is. And I also figured I'd do the rear main seal also. So the way that this engine is made, you have to drop the oil pan to get to the rear main seal. So it's kind of like a win-win, I'd imagine. So that's where we're at with that. All 16 spark plugs are ready to go. Put a little bit of Never Sees on the threads because they're going into an aluminum block. Some people say you should, some people say you shouldn't, but all I know is I just don't want any seized spark plugs. I'm going to go ahead and also do the new valve cover gaskets as well. Some of you might know what I'm going to do with this here. It was recommended, highly recommended, that you bleed the oil pump and bleed the engine with oil before starting or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You know, the engine is not on the motor mounts yet. I figured it'd give me a little more room to work with, just having it freely suspended or not attached to the frame just yet. But new spark plugs are in, and the other valve cover gaskets and things like that is ready to go. Just going to do this oil bleed and move on. That's kind of like a sideways shot of the oil dripping through the rods, coming back up. Looks good to me. All right, I got the shift linkage connected. I got the transmission support back up, and the drive shaft coupler connected, of course. I put in some new motor mounts. I didn't like the stock motor mounts because they just look big and clunky. These are a little more streamlined. But while I was doing that, I noticed that the manifold studs were not there. If you can look down in there, you see that little hole. I'm like, all right, well, where's the studs? So I got to order new studs, manifold studs, and put those in so we can get the exhaust mounted back up. And that'll be it for the day. So yesterday when I was checking into some stuff with the bolts for the exhaust manifolds, the end of the exhaust manifolds, I got those new studs and I went to go and put them in. I noticed that the holes are a lot larger. So the company I got this engine from, I guess they torched out the old bolts or the old studs. So I had to drill out these holes to 3/8. And then I got to thinking I might as well go ahead and change the transmission filter and the oil transmission fluid while I was at it. So there's that. Don't mind this wiring. I'm going to fix that up before I get everything buttoned up. I already have the AC compressor bolted on that sits right below the power steering pump. And I had seen online where some people had just unbolted the AC compressor and just kind of pulled it out of the way, and they did not have to discharge the AC system. So that's the route that I went. I think that was a good route because you all know how much it costs to get an AC system charged up and all that kind of stuff. The exhaust has been sitting outside underneath the trailer for the last month or so. Underneath it, I did that tarp. So let's get this on. I had this vacuum line unplugged earlier because I was trying to get that sensor off, but I still got to put the intake on. That's why it's surging a little bit. But now it sounds like a sewing machine with that vacuum line on. Let's ride.
One of the other things I wanted to tell you guys about was a website that I built while I was waiting for the engine to be shipped to my house. I built a site called the Truck Show List. It lists all of the truck shows in the US. It offers a calendar that shows exactly what's going on, each weekend, with information about each show's physical addresses. There's a physical map of the locations in the US so you can see them on a map geographically where they are. I'm working on listing providers as well, like chrome shops, truck washes, custom builders, and guys that do custom work on trucks, and metal polishers. So I want for this to be a place where you can go get any information about a truck show, find the closest truck wash to where you're going, or anything like that, closest chrome shop. Also, I'm looking for some sponsors. Anyone that wants to sponsor on the site, there's going to be some really cool incentives that way. There's also a really cool feature that I'm building into the site. I'm not going to mention just yet, but keep your eyes on it. You'll definitely like it. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys out on the highway somewhere.